In 2023, how do we protect and stand for the First Amendment when there are so many folks who are interested in silencing others? Let's talk about that.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on The Brian Nichols Show. Thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you live from our BNC studios here in lovely Eastern Indiana. Folks, the recession is right around the corner. I don't know if the collapse of the largest banking collapse we've had here in recent memory just took place. Yeah, the recession is right around the corner. So if you are not preparing, well, guess what? Your competitors are. So you want to revise and renew your sales and marketing strategies. Email me at brian@briannicholsconsulting.com. All right, we're going to talk today about the First Amendment, and it has very obviously been under assault, specifically over the past 3 years in an era of COVID where we were told to trust the science, trust the experts, and all the actual science and experts who were raising up concerns or objections and trying to, engage in science were silenced. They were deplatformed, and we just saw this take place more recently, not necessarily in the trust the science world, but over on Fox News, one of their leading voices, Tucker Carlson, being silenced by his bigwigs there at Fox News. So where is the First Amendment heading, and are there people there willing to stand up and fight back? To join and discuss that today from the Constitutional Rights PAC, Larry Ward. Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian.
Absolutely. Larry, thank you for joining us. Looking forward to digging into things today. All things First Amendment, but first, do us a favor. Introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience.
Larry Ward, I'm the chairman of the Constitutional Rights PAC and the founder of Stand With Tucker. And we put out the Stand With Tucker petition a number of years ago when Media Matters and George Soros were attacking advertisers to try and take Tucker off the air right as he first got his show started. And we started the petition then, and then we put it right back up right after Fox News threw him off. And, I didn't think Fox News was going to throw him off. Of course, when the show was just starting, there was a good potential that could happen. But now he's the king of, the cable news. Who thought that Fox would actually, act not in their best interest, but in the best interest of Chuck Schumer and AOC and throw Tucker off the air. And so we put the petition back up. We already have over 200,000 signatures about, of people who want to stand with Tucker, and it's growing. It's growing every single day. So if you go to standwithtucker.com, you can sign the petition and let Fox News know that they messed up pretty big, and it's time that we turn cancel culture on its head. And quite frankly, the reasons that are out there, they're all bad. There's not a good reason for Rupert Murdoch to have fired Tucker Carlson, but I have my opinions. What say you?
So this goes right into where I wanted to kick things off for the conversation today, Larry, because this conversation of free speech has been something I thought everybody in the country was on board with up until I realized, nope, that's not the case. Not only is that not the case, there are people vehemently against the idea of free speech who will go out of their way to use the strong arm of government to squash free speech and free conversations and free discussions, particularly when we're talking about very controversial and taboo subjects. You look at what just happened with Tucker Carlson. Now, here in the Brian Nichols Show, we've obviously had some disagreements, particularly in the world of economic policy that Carlson promoted. But that doesn't mean that we want to see him silenced. As a matter of fact, we want to see more people like Tucker being able to have these conversations, frankly, to one of the largest, if not the largest audiences on cable news. So it might just be an easy answer, but I think there's more to the actual question I have here. And that is, why has there been such an uptick, in your opinion, in trying to censor others over the past few years? It seems like it really has ramped up with the online deplatforming, and it's only gotten worse. What are your thoughts there, Larry?
Well, let's see who's in office now. It's Joe Biden, who is beholden not to the American voters, but to China. And Chinese communists, That's what they do. They censor their people. They shut them up. They're violent with them. What they do to the Epoch Times all around the world. The Epoch Times, of course, is a sworn enemy of China. And what China does to shut up the Epoch Times is they firebomb their offices and they torture their people. And if you read the Epoch Times, and I've done enough research to believe this, they harvest their organs. That's what they'll do to shut them up. And China Biden is right alongside. I mean, they want to keep their thumb on the American people. They want to stop our freedom of thought, because look, if we have a debate on the ideas, we win every single time.
Right.
We want a secure border. They're arguing for letting whoever they want across the border. We're for freedom, and we were against the lockdowns, and we were against the mask mandates, and we were against the vaccine mandates. And therefore, all of that stuff, we win the argument every single time. It doesn't matter what the topic is. If it's just left on debates, the right wins the arguments, and they know that. And so, the one thing Tucker said on his little video that he did from his basement that blew away Fox's ratings the other night was he said, and it's something that I said right after 2020. We are no longer in the game of persuasion. We are in the game of force, because the left has pushed us there. Because if we're in the game of persuasion, we've already won that. The American people are on our side in large numbers. The problem isn't persuading. The problem is persuading enough that you overcome the cheating, persuading enough that you overcome the advantage that they have in the mainstream media, persuading enough to overcome, the advantages they have with these BS election laws that were just kind of slapped up for COVID reasons and haven't gone down. We have to persuade that much. And every time we get to that much, because we do it, they just keep moving the goalpost, and they keep forcing us into a position where, we're going to have to fight back with force. And I don't mean violent force. I mean force, legal force. I mean force in terms of, turning the cancel culture around, and making Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch pay for their stupid decision to put a transgender on the can. I'm talking about force by changing our buying habits and only buying from American companies who give a damn about this country. I don't care who you vote for. I care if you give a damn about this country. And so there are a lot of things that we can do, to change the outcome by force, and legal is a very, very big one. We got to fight in courts. We got to sue the crap out of them the way they sue us. And, this Dominion lawsuit that just happened is really maybe one of the worst things that's happened to the First Amendment in our lifetime, is that Fox News not only capitulated on the argument that they had a right, not and almost an obligation to report on the Dominion stories. They didn't claim Dominion stole the election. They were reporting on other people who said we have to investigate this. And so they were out there, reporting on the news, which is what a news outlet should do. And Dominion suing them was to silence them, and it worked. It silenced them, it silenced Newsmax, it silenced OAN, it silenced all of them on the election. And then by taking by taking the quote unquote easy route and settling for $800 million, what Fox News just did is they said, here, we can't take these lawsuits anymore. You win. We'll shut up. And now we can't talk, and we can never challenge an election again, or else you get sued for $800 million. That's the precedent it set. And it really had a chilling effect on. It's going to have a chilling effect on the First Amendment. Mm-hmm. So we're in a really dangerous spot in our nation, so it's more important now that people like yourself, like us at the Constitutional Rights PAC, that we continue to exercise exercise our First Amendment. That's a very important word. People say that all the time. You exercise your First Amendment. You have to exercise it, which means it's going to be painful sometimes. You know, when you exercise and you work yourself out, you get sore, right? The next day you wake up sore, you're beat up. Well, when you exercise your First Amendment, the other side is going to beat you up. They're going to cancel you. They're going to impact your income. Do it anyway. You need to exercise, because you get stronger, the country will get stronger.
Amen, Larry.
We all need to keep talking.
Amen. I can't agree more. And actually, let's kind of focus on this a little bit more in detail here, because this kind of goes to my audience, which we are predominantly in this greater liberty politics world. And there has been a lot of folks who I've heard vocally say, well, we don't want to use, air quotes, the terms of the left, right? And that is this idea of using force. But I think we also have to put ourselves in the context of where we are today. It's not, to your point, force of, you know, trying to actually cause harm on others, but rather we're looking at this almost as a means of playing defense, but also by playing smart offense, by taking the wins where we know we can get the wins in terms of standing up for what is right. And this goes into something we've articulated here in the show many a time, that just because we accept that there are people who are going to have differences of ideas does not mean that we have to passively tolerate those ideas. As a matter of fact, when we hear bad ideas, I dare say we have an obligation to speak out against those ideas vocally, loudly. And we see that there has been a lot of folks in our greater liberty camp who they don't want to engage in the fight because they more so just want to go along to get along. I guess it's that mentality of just accepting the next wave of whatever the left is pushing down our throats as, well, you know, as long as they don't do X, Y, and Z. And then 5 years later, the X, Y, and Z has been way in the rear view mirror and they're going 1,000 miles full speed ahead. It's time for us to stand up and say, no, this is not okay. And that's okay to say it's not okay. I would want to maybe turn this a little bit towards, there's a story you guys shared over on Constitutional Rights PAC. A 12-year-old confronts a school board because he was told that there are only 2 gender shirts was a disruption. Now, that right there is the exact example of what we're talking about. Is like he's trying to approach this very controversial and sometimes uncomfortable conversation when we're talking about the transgender debate right now that's taking over the cultural mainstream, and trying to poke some fun, add some levity to the conversation to at least start to spark a conversation. But it seems like the school boards, in lockstep with a lot of these other corporate entities out there, don't want this conversation to even take place, but rather just accept a narrative as it has been presented and then go full speed ahead. What are your thoughts there?
Well, as someone who lives in Loudoun County, Virginia, I will tell you that this topic is near and dear with kids in public school, near and dear to my heart. And we've been fighting the public schools for a number of years now. Matter of fact, I dare to say we're almost the tip of the spear, because they try to push all this nonsense down our throat for years, with the girls going in the boys' bathroom and boys going in the girls' bathroom and locker rooms and all that kind of stuff. And if you got a daughter, you got to be very afraid to send your kid to public school. And the books that they're you know, with disgusting pornographic filth. Look, if you're into pornography, great. There are reasons why. Oh, actually, not great. You know, I don't think pornography is a good thing for anybody, to be honest with you. But at the same time, you're an adult. You have the right, you know, to make your own choices. But my kids, I get to make their choices.
Yes.
Not you, the school. The parent gets to make my kids' choices. Period. That's the way our society is built. We are not living in a communist society. You remember back in the it was maybe 10 years ago, this abhorrent woman from MSNBC came out and did a commercial, and people were shocked by it. But she actually said, you know, as Americans, we have to get over the idea that our children belong to us. And that was a commercial on MSNBC. And it was such an abhorrent idea that people were shocked, and you know, she got a lot of backlash for it. But that's not her idea. That is the leftists' idea, and they've been pushing this for a very long time.
Joe Biden just said it, like what, last week, that, oh, they're not your kids, they're our kids. It's like, no, Joe, that's Karl Marx speaking. Please sit down.
Right. They're our kids. my and my wife's children, and that's it. You know, we have a right to say, you know, no, thank you. And we're going to fight and get you to remove these things. Like what happened in Loudoun County. I don't know if you all know the whole story, but it was pretty abhorrent. You know, we were showing up to these school boards, making headlines. Fox News, everybody was covering what was going on there. 500 people showing up at a school board meeting, and it was all, you know, they had the other side there, you know, the purple hair transgenders and their supporters, but for the most part, it was like 20-1 parents who were just outraged about what was going on, and the parents were there every time, and they said, we're going to vote on next meeting, we're going to vote on you know, letting boys go into the girls' bathroom. And in between that situation, a girl was raped by a boy who went into the girls' bathroom, right? And instead of having that conversation, when 500 people showed up at the next meeting, they hid it. The father of that girl who was raped showed up at the school board meeting and was arrested. They stopped. They let their people talk, and then they shut the meeting down. And everybody was pissed because they all came out to have a word, and then no one else was allowed to have a word. And this guy just kept saying, "But my daughter was raped." And they arrested him. And the Soros prosecutor in Loudoun County was going to throw the book at him. Mm-hmm. And then it all comes out that the school board not only covered it up, but they moved the kid from one school to another, and he did the same thing. So, you know, this is not, you know, we're being intolerant to transgender kids. No, we're trying to protect our regular gender kids. Mm-hmm. We're trying to protect, you know, the girls who are changing in the school locker room or going into the bathroom and you know, being attacked. I mean, we are that's the objective. It's not about being mean to somebody else, right? And so that's going on. And then of course some kid goes in and says there are only two genders, and they throw him out of school. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. That kid has a right to wear that T-shirt. What if now it's funny. I want him to go in again. If I was my kid, I'd put on another shirt. I'd say there are only three genders. just see what they say about that. Oh, now it's like, oh, are there only three? No, because they say there's 47. You know. So yep. It's absurdity. They want us to believe up is down and down is up, and boy is girl and girl is boy, and you know, you can be transabled now. You know, you can think that you're an amputee, and everybody's got to say, oh, I feel so sorry for your missing leg when you're looking right at it.
Yep.
I mean, it's a world of lies, and that's where they want us to go, and that's why they have to censor us, because if they don't, then their lies won't carry, because someone will challenge them. Mm-hmm. And as soon as someone challenges them and tell them how absurd they are, and they do that on national television, like Tucker Carlson does every single night, he challenged the absurdity. He drove them crazy. He challenged the absurdity of the Ukraine war. Why are we there? And you saw the Defense Department and the deep state and the neocons all cheer when he was fired.
Yep.
Right? He challenged the absurdity of you know, this transgender movement. He challenged the absurdity of the democratic woke corporations. He challenged the absurdity of the vaccine mandates and the mask mandates. And when he brought Robert Kennedy on a couple of days ago, a lot of people think that was probably tied to why he was fired, because you know what? You look at what happened just a couple weeks before, when James O'Keefe was thrown out of his own company, the company he founded. Yep. Because he did a Pfizer, expose.
Yep. So
he gets thrown out of his own company, and then so could it be the deep state? Could it be the pharmaceutical industry? It could be. My personal opinion, it was very sudden. He said he was going to do a show on Monday. He was prepping a show on Monday. It means nobody called him and said, don't come in. He was already working on the show on Monday. But what happened in between that Friday and Monday was this Ray Epps interview, where Ray Epps, the guy who was an instigator on January 6th, he was the guy saying, "Go into the Capitol, go into the Capitol," screaming over and over again. That guy, they did a kind of a whitewash expose on CBS and blamed everybody for treating him badly. I forget, who did Kevin McCarthy give the January 6th footage to?
Tucker. Yep.
Tucker. And I think Tucker was prepping. I haven't spoken to Tucker. I don't know Tucker. I know a lot of people do, and I haven't asked him, but I bet he was prepping a show to expose Ray Epps.
Yep.
Because he had all the footage.
Yeah, well, folks, remember recently here we had the guy who had the podium that he walked across, and he did the big smile and cheer. He faced months in jail, and he just is now getting his life back together. Ray Epps is now being martyred by the very people who said anybody who went into the Capitol building in J6 is right up there with a domestic terrorist. Larry, I don't understand. Maybe that there's a little bit of discrepancy there, and I guess maybe we're hinting at the reasonings behind that. But I looked at the clock here. We're already hard pressed for time, which means that the very fun questions are going to be behind our paywall as a Sovereign exclusive and Patreon exclusive. So folks, if you want to hear me ask Larry where he thinks a lot of this kind of craziness and insanity is actually coming from, well, you're going to have to be a supporting listener, $1.99 a month over on our Patreon. And by the way, if you are joining us here on Sovereign, yes, you will get the entire episode included here just in this episode over on Sovereign. So make sure you go ahead and sign up. Otherwise, you can find us over on YouTube and on Rumble. Just do me a favor, hit that little subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss a single time we go live. And with that being said, final thoughts for the episode today. I guess, I'll kick things off, Larry, and that is, this is why it's so important for us to set narratives, not respond to narratives. And this is something I brought up when I was over on Tim Pool's show, is that, and it was at the time, it was right when Ron DeSantis was doing the air quote, "don't say gay" bill. But what was he actually doing? He was saying if you were in K through third grade at the time, that no, this conversation will not take place in terms of transgenderism or questioning, your sexual orientation. If you're a child, no, what we're going to do is allow parents to have that conversation, at the very least determine when that conversation will, if it does, take place. And instead of trying to play defense consistently, it has to be something we do differently. And to your point, saying we have to be, playing the game of offense, using force, right? And using force not in the negative sense of trying to harm others, but trying to push our agenda forward when it's time. Frankly, we're at the point we have to do something different. People are starting to realize that the country is going in a negative direction, and I don't want it to be too late. So yes, we have to start playing offense, start setting narratives instead of responding to them. Larry, what do you have for us for your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Go to standwithtucker.com. Look, I know you sign 1 million petitions, but there's something powerful when you sign a petition aimed at a corporation like Fox News and say, look, we've had enough. And we're standing with Tucker, and where Tucker's audience goes, that's where we're going. And so, like I said, over 200,000 people, which means, typically when you see a petition, you see the numbers, it's 100 to 1. So every one person that signs it represents another 100 people who mean it. And so they know that there's 20 million people, 20 million Fox viewers who are really ticked off. And so, yeah, please add your name. And when you do, we'll keep you updated in our newsletter. So please do that.
Standwithtucker.com. This is the Constitutional Rights PAC. We'll include all those links in the show notes. Larry, it's been a great conversation. And folks, if you want to see part 2 of the conversation behind the paywall, we'll make sure, again, you support us over on Patreon and go ahead and catch us over on Sovereign as a Sovereign exclusive. Oh, and by the way, don't forget, if you want to be a part of our Good People Network, we'll head over to facebook.com, search Good People Network. All you have to do is put in your name for a request to join the group, and I'll make sure we get you in there. And why? We're talking about good people who are doing good things, trying to bring out the good in others and bring great solutions to their communities. So if you want to be a part of that community, I would love to have you there. Facebook.com, the Good People Network. But with that being said, that's all we have for you today. Otherwise, we'll see you behind the paywall. So Brian Nichols signing off here on The Brian Nichols Show for Larry Ward. We'll see you later.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.